In the Fuzzy Memories podcast, we celebrate the good, the rad, and the fugly of the 80s and 90s.
We're three latchkey kids who made it out alive.
And in each episode, we break down all the culture that popped, 1 year at a time.
Whether it's the birth of legends...
I'm Lyme disease free today, and I have Whitney Houston and MTV to thank. Or audacious moves.
Imagine also the poor Golden Gate Bridge. You turn 75 and people have a party on you.
Yep. I don't want that.
Or even confusing PSAs.
And the stop, drop, and roll. I mean, I assumed
Yes.
as an adult I would catch on fire weekly.
All the time!
We've got a take that will make you laugh.
We've also got thoughts on all sorts of random phenomena and the most unmitigated of golf.
Why sharks can't be trusted, people can't be trusted, and rivers can't be trusted. It's collusion.
Of the highest degree.
Uh-huh.
You were counseling me to start my remarks with, first of all, bitch.
Everyone in that room would have snapped to attention.
It's going to be basically coffee lids, shark revenge, and then maybe like Matt Getz. God, we need to do something about him.
Join us every other Wednesday to celebrate the hits, the misses, and the misfits of the weirdest decades.
If I could tell my 14-year-old self from 1990 that I would be eating in a Cheesecake Factory in
Beverly Hills.
I'd be like, we did it. We did it, Joe.
We did it.
Listen and subscribe to Fuzzy Memories on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and your favorite podcast platform.
Hello and welcome to Broads and Books, the podcast with one unique theme, 4 handpicked book recommendations, and 2 broads. I'm Amy.
And I'm Erin, and this is a special Broads and Books bonus episode.
In our regular episodes on Wednesdays, we tell you about our favorite books based on different weekly themes. In every episode, you get one clear idea. Books are our boyfriends and girlfriends and every form of significant other.
Soulmates, really.
Yes.
So we had a thought. Those authors that write the books we love, they probably feel like soulmates with books too.
They probably do. So we figured we should ask them about their life partnerships with books.
And that's what this new bonus series is all about.
Today on the Broads Talk Books With, we've got Julia Phillips. I recommended her book, Disappearing Earth, in episode 51, where we talked about relationships gone bad.
So we got Julia on the phone, and she was an absolute dream.
An absolute dream.
So great. We talked about her favorite books, how she organizes her library, which personally I liked, wild fan encounters, her surprising pop culture obsession, and so much more.
She was a goddamn delight, Erin.
Yes, she was.
She makes amazing recommendations, and you'll find all of them in the show notes on your podcast player and our website. You will absolutely find something to add to your increasingly unrealistic to-be-read pile.
If you've subscribed to Broads and Books in your favorite podcast player, you'll get each of these bonus episodes right to you. But you can also find them at our website at broadsandbooks.com. Everything that you need, we provide.
Everything. And now, here's our interview with Julia Phillips. We like to start off with, us as younger people. Did you have a favorite book as a kid or a teen that you remember?
Gosh, I really, really loved fairy tales, Grimm's fairy tales. I was really obsessed with growing up. And I also was very into Roald Dahl, specifically Matilda. I carried Matilda around with me and wanted to be her very, very badly.
Well, another thing that we've discussed a couple times on the podcast is classics that we struggled with, or maybe for some readers might have been a turnoff early on in their reading career. Was there any classic that maybe through school or something that you were forced to read that you struggled with?
I have a lot of guilt to this day about, I still have a lot of trouble with James Joyce and with William Faulkner, who I first picked up or was instructed to pick up in high school, both of whom I've just never understood how to read a sentence. Dubliners was okay. Dubliners I could do, but everything beyond that was really challenging. And Faulkner I've really not even been able to dip my toe into. So aspire to that, but it's very challenging.
It is, and I think you're right that somehow we feel guilty because these are
Yes.
supposed to be the classics, but there's just nothing there for a lot of us.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. There are so many books I read, classics that I read when I was younger, that when I reread them, I thought, oh, now is the right time for me to read them. And I see now that there's something there that I couldn't access before. But there are other books that I haven't found that way in yet. And there are lots of other interesting things to read, certainly. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thinking about other interesting things that you may have found in the past, were there particular books that you remember reading and thinking, I want to do this someday? Like, this is what I want to do.
That's a great question. I think so many of the books that I loved in high school are not the ways that I aspired to write, but they were certainly the feeling of being so immersed in storytelling was something that I wanted to do very badly, a feeling I was always chasing in my reading and my writing. So I loved Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and I would not at all say that I write in a magic realist thread, but I absolutely was knocked to the ground every single time I read one of his books. I think he is just a brilliant storyteller in every way, and his writings, even in translation, are so stunning. I was really into Francesca Lia Block and really into Philip Pullman, kind of Golden Compass stories.
I was going to say that is interesting that all of those three books there can't be a direct line drawn to your book, but somehow they affected you so deeply.
They affected me so deeply. Just the experience of reading and feeling so blown away by these imaginary worlds. That I loved that so much. I just loved the experience of reading fiction, even if on a sentence level, what I admired about these writers was very different from what I aspired to in my own work.
That's cool. I don't think I've heard anyone else make that distinction. I really liked the immersion of these things, but maybe not necessarily
the style or the genre.
Yeah.
Oh, I love and even to say I love the style and the genre of all of those writers, but it wasn't what I think for a long time I had this idea that who I would be writing, that I was trying to write like John Updike, even as, and I'm a big Updike fan, but those were not the stories that most immersed me, but it felt like that was what, I don't know that or what I ought to do or something, what I ought, the tradition I ought to try to be in.
Yes. Yeah. Wow.
Well, obviously another thing we cover a lot on the podcast is our current reading lives and our, increasingly not attainable to be read piles.
Oh my gosh, yes.
How many books are on your TBR pile? And are there a few you can share?
And are you comfortable sharing the amount of books?
I am not.
I honestly don't think it can be counted. I have organized my bookshelf at this point into books I recently reorganized my bookshelf into books that are on their side that I've already read and books that are standing up and down that I have yet to read. And it is and I've got a pretty big bookshelf, and I would say 40% of it I haven't read yet. There are so many books that I want to read that aren't, that just keep piling up and that I'm so excited to get into. That
makes me feel
Oh my gosh.
My own bookshelf is the same way. I
Oh,
have
you're
all the
kidding
books in
me.
there that I haven't read, and I look at it and I think, what am I doing?
It's good though.
And then I buy another
I
book.
know. A couple years ago, I told myself I was going to stop buying books unless I knew the person personally or was like really, if the book was just out and I was really invested in supporting it and signaling that I support it. And that that is no standard at all. It turns out that has not restricted any of my book buying in the least. I just keep going. It's really terrible. But I really am two books that I bought in the past year that I'm so excited about reading and are Ordinary Girls by Jakira Diaz and We Cast a Shadow by Maurice Carlos Ruffin. And I'm so excited about those. And the other day I had the good luck of talking to Maurice about a challenge in the project I'm working on right now. We were talking about narrative voice, and I was talking about it. He was like, have you read my book? he was like, my book is, speaks to exactly the issue that you're talking about, in terms of having a first person narrator and like conveying unreliability in that narrator. And I was like, I have had your book sitting on my shelf since the day it came out. I keep on and I haven't read. So that's my number one, both for personal research and for relationship maintenance. I gotta read this book. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, I was gonna say at this point it's just us. We don't have anyone we're talking to. Yeah. So that's added pressure.
I don't know. I think it takes the pressure off too, because I think everyone is in the same position of having too much to read. There's so many good things, and the more you read, the more good stuff. It seems like the faster I read, the more there is that I'm behind on.
Right?
Well, and as we continue to talk to authors, we start getting recommendations of books we've never heard of. So now my list just keeps growing and growing and growing.
Unattainable.
Yes.
But
still fun.
It's so fun. This is part of the fun of being alive that we just keep chasing, right?
Yes.
Right.
Well, of the books that you have been able to get to recently, has there been a book that particularly surprised you?
I just read this week. I just read Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. And did you? Okay, were you? I was blown away. What did you think of it? I was blown away.
The same thing. Yeah, the way that there's almost like a magical realism element of it. The way
absolutely
in there. It was. I read it so fast, but yet it's so well written. Too.
It's so well written. Really it's so funny and crisp and sharp. And I had never read any of his work before, and I was just bowled over. As soon as I finished it in the middle of the night, and I sent an email to a friend, and I was like, I need you to read this book right now so we can talk about it. I just need you to read it at 2 a.m. This was coming to her.
Yes. So you have a friend like Erin and I, where as soon as one of us reads, we've got to read this.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't know if you guys have this together, but the friend that I do this with, who's a writer, her name's Lee Stein. She and I have really different taste in reading. So there are some books that we recommend to each other that both of us love, and there are some books that we recommend to each other that the other person's like, I hate this. Why did you say? Which is very fun.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, very much so. Yep. Yeah, there's some that land right in that middle. Like
yes, totally.
Yeah.
There's some that I'm like, I don't know. And Amy's like, I loved it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. That we feel like that makes us good partners.
I think so too. I think it's a really nice reminder all the time to know that loving a book is such a subjective experience, and what we get out of it is so personal. And I think it's easy when we read in isolation to assume like this is good and this is bad, and not be able. And when we're in a conversation with someone else, it is much. It I think helps us perceive that this book is not good or bad on its own. It just isn't my taste, or doesn't do it for me.
And you're right. Yeah. And when you can connect with someone about a book, it just
it's the best.
It's so incredible.
It's the best.
It is the best. How do you go about finding book recommendations? Like you mentioned, do they come from friends? Do you mentioned that you only buy ones of people.
Yes.
Is that me?
So many of the books, people I know, that's a funny thing to say. It's like people who's, as if I know all these writers. Really, I know like a couple people, but really for example, Jakira Diaz, like I saw her, I'd never met her, and I saw her read at an event, and her reading was so incredible. And this was a few months before Ordinary Girls came out. I ran to the cash register and I said, I have to pre-order this book. This book is incredible. And, when you see I think to see someone in person for me really is so compelling. So I love to find new work through going to events and hearing people read and just hearing their own work and their own voices. That is so exciting to me. But most of the way I read these days, is through my library, and specifically through ebooks of the library. And the way that I do that is that the library app that I have, Yeah, exactly right. So when it shows me how do they put it? Most popular. What's most popular at my library? And so then I go to that and I start going through and I take out anything that's available and I put on hold anything I'm interested in. And that is most of the way the hold list sort of decides the books that I read next. And it's the best because I find I'm reading so many things that, I've heard of or look intriguing, or the cover is fascinating, or any if other people are reading it and I say, oh wow, I wonder why. And it is it's a much broader and more fun way to read than I'd read in the past, where the books I was reading were things that I was buying, and so there was this sort of immediate need for an investment. I think that kept my reading much more conservative in many ways.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very. Yeah. We both, Amy and I, love the library.
Oh God.
We get so excited when things that are on hold come in.
It's so thrilling. I also get so upset when I want to read a book and the library doesn't have it for some reason. Like the library hasn't acquired the book. Yes, I'm like, how dare you? And then I feel like the library would never fail me, so it has to be some other link in the chain. I was like, who is keeping this book from being in the library? It must be somebody. Yeah, how dare
Yeah, before we got on the call, actually, Erin was just telling me that she picked up another 5 to 10 books on your hold list.
Oh
They
my
all
gosh.
come in at the same time.
I went and there was only
They
always come in at once.
Yes.
And I was like,
They always come in at once.
I thought I was only picking up
It's
2.
so stressful.
It's stressful, and there were 5, and I got a little sweaty because I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta
Of
go
course.
read.
You're like, I got to cancel all my plans. This is it. I can't
I got homework to do.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, so thinking about Disappearing Earth, we are recommending it in an upcoming episode, and I know you and I have talked about it previously for the Greek Journal. Thinking about when you were writing this, were there any particular books at the moment or from the past that you think helped you or that you drew from in order to write the book?
Oh yeah, absolutely. A lot of research around, well, first off, a lot of nonfiction books and research around Kamchatka, which is the region where the book is set.
Yeah.
I wanted to know more about the history, know more about the indigenous history of Kamchatka, know more about the history of colonization on Kamchatka, the Soviet era there. So reading a lot of, in some ways, sometimes natural history. Like there's a book called, I think, Stellar's History of Kamchatka by a guy named George Stellar, who was a naturalist or a biologist. Let's see, he wrote it in 1743 and 1744. Yeah.
Oh my God.
But he was one of the first. So yeah, he was a German, I believe, who was in one of the first colonizing excursions to the region, and wrote a lot about nature there and different animals and different sea creatures. It was fun to read all these different people's perspectives on this single place that has had such a multifaceted and complicated and painful history.
Well, was it weird to you that knowing that you had been there, and I didn't tell you this, Erin, but Julia went there, knowing that you'd been there, was it interesting to read some of that history and the natural history? Knowing
it was fascinating. Well, it was fascinating and it was wonderful. And so much of what is described in these books, I haven't seen. Because, for example, a lot of the animals, or not a lot, but a few of the animals described in Stellar's book, for example, have been driven extinct by hunting. And so there are animals there that sort of shaped this place as a rich and robust ecosystem through which, especially these Russian colonizers, could create an economy. And the economy has since transformed because those animals were killed off. That's really fascinating to me to think about where the sort of many economic lives and the many uh, natural lives, that is, sort of natural arcs of different living creatures in this region, how they've intersected and come and gone. It was also fascinating to me to read about so many of the choices made in Kamchatka by the government over the past couple centuries have been around preservation of certain lands to support given economies. Like, for example, the natural parks there were created as sable hunting reserves. And I'd spent a lot of time in national parks there. And to understand better the history and the sort of top level justifications that had gone on for creating those places, that was fascinating to me. That all sounds very nerdy, I fear. I didn't only read, scientific texts about Kamchatka. Even if I did. If I only did that, I think the book would be really well grounded.
There'd be a lot of facts.
There'd be a lot of facts. I also found, as I worked on the manuscript, I read a lot of, so much of the book is about, these two sisters who go missing and the impact that has on the community around them. And so I ended up reading a lot of memoirs of grief and loss, especially around children who were abducted or parents who lost their children. One that was huge for that was a book called Wave by Sonali Dharana. I'm not sure I pronounced her last name, Dharana Yagala. It's a memoir that she wrote after the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, in which she lost her husband, her two children, and both her parents. It's really an extraordinary memoir. And it talks about grief not in a narrative of like, this terrible thing happened and I've since healed, but as grief as this thing happened and it will never be recovered from. Like, this is an immense tragedy, and every day I am navigating it in a new way. And she really is open in her grief and in her loss, and reading that was extraordinary. I read a few other memoirs of parents who had lost children, and also a bunch of memoirs of folks who had been abducted and then kept in captivity. Yeah, that's
so a lot of light reading.
A lot of light reading.
A little beach reading right there.
Some beach reading. Well, it was so helpful, the research, and in the same way that it's so helpful to read in general, I think, to not only understand the events of people's lives, but also understand how people live in general, like even in the most challenging and brutal and tragic circumstances, to understand, on the day-to-day level, the moment-to-moment level, like, what are we thinking? What do we do? How do we proceed? To me, that is the reason I read fiction or nonfiction, is to understand that. And I think the way a memoir invites you inside someone's mind is extraordinary.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wave is really good.
Jeez. Yeah.
Wave is really, really
ask
good.
another question, but I'm still, my mind is, I'm just letting it wash over me.
Abduction memoirs.
Yeah.
Abduction memoirs. I know. It's a good thing to sometimes in these most extreme situations, like these most unimaginable and really, with abduction, especially abduction by a stranger, statistically rare situations, it's like the most human parts come out of the person. They're just, everyone's just a normal person pushed to their most challenging situation, and all their kind of normal, usual coping and comforting mechanisms come out.
Yeah.
That's really interesting to read.
Well, you can obviously tell where that research has gone in the
Mhm.
novel. And congrats, by the way, on all the end of the year
Boy,
awards.
thank you.
And you were killing it at the end of the year and beginning of this
Jeez,
year.
thank
So well
you.
done, obviously. Yeah.
Thank you.
It paid off. All
Yes,
that. Well, there's 5 questions we like to ask all authors towards the end of the interview. And the first one is, we want to know about one of your most memorable fan interactions, whether that was weird or fun, crazy, scary. Yeah, we've heard them all.
Most memorable fan interactions, meaning I'm the fan or someone else is the fan?
Someone else is the
The
fan.
yeah.
And maybe at a book signing or an event, and a fan interaction in some way.
I just felt like we were in improv.
Right,
for a second.
right. My most memorable interaction is kind of a bummer. It stands out because it is so unusual. Getting to have this book out in the world and touring with it and meeting different people and talking to different people has been such a gift and an education and a joy. It's just been like the most wonderful experience. And this was really pretty much the only experience I've had that was startlingly challenging, which is that someone came up to me after reading and was like, you have repressed childhood trauma and you don't remember it. And like, this is you, that's what she was like, it's so clear and you're in the reading that you need to write about that. And that's like the real truth. And like, this book is, put this book aside and just start to write about your trauma. And then she, and I had like a really strong reaction to that. And she was, and then she handed me her card, and her card was like repressed trauma therapist. It was very clear that like this was her, this was her thing. This was how she absorbed.
So she went to like a conference and they said for sales, go to all
I think,
and tell them that they have
I think
trauma.
probably like at any cocktail party she's at or pizza parlor or anything, she like, no matter what anyone she says, you have repressed trauma. Yeah, exactly. At the Chuck E. Cheese, she's like, stop playing pinball and listen to this. But it was really, it was really intense, but it was fascinating, the experience, because it really, sometimes these tough interactions, that the knee-jerk reactions that come up in us or in me teach me a lot about what kind of my most deeply held feelings are on a subject. And I was shocked at how much of my reaction was around like, this is fiction. Fiction is beautiful. Like, you don't understand what fiction is. Like, I felt very, very, very strongly defensive of the ability to write, or like the freedom to write fiction as imaginary and joyful.
Were you like, listen, I read a book from 1745. This is not about my trauma.
It was really, I said,
had a hard time.
I wish I'd had a great comeback, but instead I was just like, thank you so much.
That's such the best thing.
I know. Just saying,
I think it was
like grinning and going along and then spending the next 8 months raging about it.
Airing it out on
Exactly right.
that would be great if you had like autographed her card and handed it back to her. Oh, you didn't want an autograph? Oh.
I think also, I mean, like, to give this woman credit, I think she's trying to do her best in the world. We're all just trying to do our best. Like, I don't think she meant to shock or hurt me. She meant to be really helpful to me, and it just didn't land. It backfired.
That's a generous reading of the situation. Yeah.
Well, thinking about better times, as you started, publicizing the book and getting out into events and probably meeting other authors, was there someone, another author that you had wanted to meet and you got to meet that person and it went well?
Oh my gosh, so many.
That's awesome.
Everybody.
Everyone.
every single person I have met, people that are my heroes, people that are, like people that same as me are coming out with their first book and just learning the ropes, have been so extraordinarily open and generous and genuine. And it really, it's like a balm on the soul of the reader child that I was, who felt like these authors were like some different species of human being. Everyone is so wonderful. I remember meeting Susan Choi this fall and just like being bowled over by how incredibly kind and forthright and real she was. That's a funny thing to say, that someone's real. I guess everyone is real, but I think when you see someone that from a distance seems to me to be so glamorous and so talented and just like a master of their craft, it is hard for me to also ascribe to them like they're a normal person who, like sleeps at night and brushes their teeth. And she was just extraordinary. I also want to, I haven't met yet Tyree Jones in person, but I'm a huge fan of hers. And she, every interaction I've had with her, which has like been online or, through messaging or through email, she has been so extraordinarily generous, which with what I imagine is like a negative 30 seconds of free time with her day. I can't imagine how busy she is. I cannot imagine how busy she is. And yet every single time we're in contact, she acts like she's like, I've got nothing more important to do. She's so incredibly supportive of everybody else. She lifts everybody up. She's just, I can't believe it. That it just blows me away that people can be such a role model, not only in their craft, but in the way that they live.
That's so cool. We love to hear that too. That some of them, especially when we hear people we love too, that they're just adults.
Yeah.
And they use the bathroom and they do all the adults do.
I can't verify that for anyone I've met, but I think can neither confirm nor deny. No. Totally.
How would you say your love or joy of reading has changed since you became a published writer?
It's interesting. It's since I've become a published writer, I, for the first time, have books that I have like homework that's reading. Before I had, when I work on a manuscript, there are books that I want to read or I feel like I have to read in order to research it. Maybe they're research books or comp titles but that is sort of self-assigned reading and quite a pleasure to just dig further into whatever obsession is leading me into the writing that day. So there's a different kind of joy that is not self-assigned that has come of getting the opportunity to do book reviews, for example, or getting the opportunity to blurb other people's books. It feels more like being in school again and having someone say, you have to read this by this day and respond in this way. That being not respond in this way being like, we need X number of sentences back, or X number of words back, or and I should say, sometimes it feels like you have to, and sometimes it feels like you get to. I mean, it really is I get to have the joy of reading books that aren't out yet, or critically engaging in books in ways I wouldn't otherwise. But it also is like February, I had, I think January, February? Some month, either last month or this month, I had like 6 or 7 blurbs due in a month. And there was no other, there's no other reading to do. And even it turned out to be, there's no other time to read things, even those books that I was hoping to read in blurb, I couldn't get to all of them. And that really was a totally new experience for me and really quite challenging and interesting.
I see that. Just the change in the demands on your time as far as a reader.
Yeah, but like in a happy way, but in a new way. And new things are challenging for me to get used to sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is there a book that you wish everyone would read?
I wish everyone in the world to read. I think that's a tough one. I don't know what,
Sure.
but
Definitely an impossible
I
question.
do, I do wish that, this is a funny thing to say, but I wish that every white person in America, which is a lot of people, I'm like, so I feel like I'm casting a wide net there. I wish everyone would read White Fragility, by Robin DiAngelo. I really, when I read that, I thought, oh, this is a textbook. Like, this should be in schools, and in every school, to teach white people what we have not been teaching each other, which is how to have conversations about power and race in the society that we live in. She really, really clearly and simply argues for how not having those conversations hurts everybody, and how, it's like a primer for how to exist in the world. And when I read that, I thought, well, geez, this is it. If I'm assigning a book to everybody, absolutely everybody, I would say Good Talk by Mira Jacob, which came out last year.
I love that book.
I love that book. I mean, she models in that book how to have conversations and be alive in the world, like trying to hurt other people less. And I feel like that is joyful and challenging and wonderful for every single person who reads it. And as a companion text, white people in America can read White Fragility.
Well, maybe we should request that everyone reads it before the election. In 2020. Maybe it'll change some things.
Well, let's make all sorts of requests for people, things to do before the election in 2020. That would be fantastic.
That'd be great. Yes. Great. Well, another thing that we do in the podcast is cover some pop culture at the end, maybe things that we're obsessed with, like other podcasts, music, TV shows. Mm-hmm. What's one of your current pop culture obsessions?
I really recently, in the past month or so, have not been able to stop listening to Show Yourself from Frozen 2. Have you guys seen Frozen 2?
Yes, actually I have.
Okay. I cannot. How do you feel about this? I feel like this song is setting me over the edge. Like, I cannot stop listening to it.
Yeah. Okay. There's so it's like a weird Pied Piper thing
really
with their song. Yeah, you get sucked in and then you can't get back out. Yeah.
I really cannot stop. I think it's sort of the longer and less distilled version of I Am Moana from Moana, which I also listen to all the time, which is a perfect song. But I really love an anthem where someone says, like, I'm embracing my power, and like, I was afraid to be myself, but now I'm myself. I love that. I love that kind of subgenre of songs. So I wish I could. I've been listening to that song like 4 hours a day.
Are you feeling empowered after listening to it?
I do. Every single time I feel empowered, and every single time midway through the song, I get very teary. I was listening to it on the subway the other day, and I was like, "Oh my god, she's embracing her power." It was so.
So you were on a nonstop emotional roller coaster.
Oh, constantly. I get off the roller coaster and I get right back on.
Oh my god. I'm never going to look at Frozen 2 the same.
No.
That's amazing.
So I want you to make a Spotify playlist just of anthems, that whole
oh my god, there's so many great anthems. I'm the Greatest Star from Funny Girl is also like that. Oh my god. Also Defying Gravity. Basically anything Idina Menzel sings, you're like, this is it.
Yeah, we found it. Yeah.
I don't think I could have ever predicted that would have been your pop culture obsession. I
love it so much. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's so great.
It's really been pretty intense. Thank you for being such a receptive conversation partners in that. It's really been very intense.
Well, thank you for sharing this very personal part.
Yep.
Erin, we just had our interview with Julia Phillips.
She's so great.
She was so great.
She was so great. One of the things that I loved that I really glommed onto is the fact of how she organizes her library.
Yeah.
Because I do it the exact same way.
When Julia said that, I was watching your face and there was like a moment of like, oh, she's seen my soul.
Yes.
She's seen into me and myself.
I've never
And-
met anyone else that does that, where they're half the read and then the unread, and that you just keep buying books and the unread side keeps getting bigger, and you're like, I don't care.
I don't care.
I buy with
You're still-
abandon.
Yeah, I think because of that, you guys are connected now. Like,
Yes.
forever.
And I do the same thing. I create arbitrary rules for books I'm going to buy, and then I break them.
And then you break them.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can't be contained.
Yes.
By even our own rules.
No, absolutely not.
I was really impressed by the extent of the research that she did when she was reading for Disappearing Earth. And also afterwards, you and I talked about how rough it must have been to just be reading abduction memoirs.
Oh my goodness.
Over and over.
Yeah, to
Like,
live
how
in
do you,
that.
Yeah, how do you let that go after a while?
No. And obviously, I mean, the product is in her book. I mean, it's phenomenal.
Yes.
So you can see that all that research paid off, but that had to be really tough.
Yeah.
Really tough.
Yeah.
Hard
and,
to live in.
And you were saying like one of your triggers is always children
Yes.
being put in situations. Yeah. So
That
I
would
think
be
you
really hard.
would have tapped out on that one.
Yeah, I would have probably. One of the other things that was just a dream because I live this every once in a while with my granddaughter Charlie is that she loves the Frozen song from Frozen 2.
I was so delighted by that.
It was
little
amazing.
tidbit.
And now I will forever think of Julia Phillips when I hear Frozen, even coming out of Charlie's mouth.
I just picture because you said, you will listen to a song over and over again.
Yes.
So I'm just picturing her just repeat listening to this.
Over and over. I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was another thing that I was like, somebody sees me. Like, that's what I do.
God, I think really this interview has just shown that you're connected in some real weird ways, spiritual ways,
Yes.
emotional
Yes.
ways,
Yeah.
for sure.
And I do that thing too, where you get a little part of it, even though you've listened to it 400 times and then one part catches you and you kind of start crying.
Yeah.
Totally have that.
And I have to admit, I've never heard this new song, but I imagine it's a delight. I don't know.
It
Okay,
is a
great.
delight.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll take
it's
your
a
word for it.
delight.
Great. One of the things that disturbed me the most was her fan encounter. Was she a fan, or was she trying to shill her own business? The psychotherapist,
Business for
that
sure.
basically came up and said, "You're traumatized, and let's talk about it."
Which, as a lot of the authors we talked to, Julia's very generous reading of that
Gracious.
situation was like, she's just doing her best.
And you and me were looking at each other like, "Nope,
Not doing her best. She's doing her worst. That's just rude.
So you have permission, Julia, to be like, "No, that woman was crazy."
Yeah. Legit, I don't have trauma
Exactly.
that I want to talk to you about.
Yeah. And if I can survive reading a bunch of abduction memoirs.
Yeah, I
and then
got
put-
this.
Yeah.
Settle down.
It made me
Goodness.
upset, Erin.
Yeah.
I was upset on her
I
behalf.
also thought it was just a weird way for the like I was imagining that psychotherapist, like, does she go to a lot of readings and just wait to hear?
Yeah.
Because books are, I mean, they're kind of known for making you raw, vulnerable. Like, she's just waiting for an author and then like jumping on it, like, hey,
And to be honest, yeah. I mean, I know me personally, when I write, like I feel like I reveal parts of myself that
Absolutely.
are kind of harsh. So if someone came up to me,
that'd be devastating.
Man, that'd be rough.
Yeah. So another point for her for being able to handle that
Yes.
with grace.
Meanwhile, Erin and I were ready for fisticuffs. over
We
here.
were.
Yeah.
The minute that I feel loyalty to you, I will fight for you. I'm not good at it. It's probably not going to go well, but I will do it.
You will probably cut yourself before you cut the other person.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I would do it for
You would
Julia
do it.
Phillips.
Absolutely.
Because she was amazing.
Well, we will be back next Wednesday with our regular weekly themed episodes. In the meantime, you can head to our website, broadsandbooks.com, and check out all of these bonus episodes. And if you've missed any, now's the perfect time to get listening.
Like we said, this is a new series of bonus episodes we're providing. Have you seen them all? Have you listened to them all?
You should. They're all
You should.
terrific.
They're amazing. Mona Wad, Chanel Benz, Angie Kim, and more coming all the
We
time.
got a list, Erin.
They're
A list.
incredible.
Yes. So subscribe now in your favorite podcast player, and you'll get them all direct to you.
Happy reading.
I'm up again. Same night, another dream. Before trying this recording thing, I didn't remember much of anything of these dreams. I didn't remember much from any of the women. And one night of doing this, and it's broken things open. The dreams they're in me, and they're coming out of me, and...
Talk to me. I am not broken. I am the most whole, most real.
Cause their despair. I cause their despair. I wait for the word. I wait for the word. Witch. Witch. Witch.
Look at the mad woman in her cage. She was a woman with holes inside her. That was the heaviest factor, the final evidence, the heart of the issue.
Somehow, you understand this. You hear me. Wherever you are, whatever this is, you... This isn't a dream journal anymore. It's not. It's just fact. Because now this is some sort of record. What are these dreams? Maybe there's a better question. Who are these women? Weird Woman is a Broads and Books production. All 9 episodes are available January 10th. Listen and subscribe to Weird Woman on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and your favorite podcast platform. That's WYRD Woman, wherever you listen to podcasts.